November 14, 1943. 5:47 hours. Bougainville Island, Solomon Islands. Corporal Jack Morrison, 23 years old, from Scranton, Pennsylvania, pressed his back against the twisted roots of a banyan tree and tried to make himself invisible. His hands trembled as he gripped his M1 Thompson submachine gun, the steel cold despite the oppressive jungle heat already building before sunrise. 50 yards ahead, through the curtain of morning mist, he could hear them, Japanese voices, coordinating movement, the metallic click of equipment, the shuffle of boots on wet earth. His squad had walked straight into it. 8 Marines, now pinned down in a drainage ditch, by what sounded like a full platoon of Japanese infantry, dug into a position they hadn't known existed. Morrison's squad leader, Sergeant Frank Chen, lay motionless 15 feet away, blood pooling in the mud from a wound Morrison couldn't see clearly enough to assess. The problem was simple and deadly. They needed to suppress that position, but their Thompsons were only effective to about 100 yards. The Japanese were dug in at 150, maybe 175 yards, behind sandbags and palm logs. Morrison's .45 caliber rounds were hitting dirt 20 yards short of the enemy position. He could see the impacts, little puffs of mud that did absolutely nothing except reveal his location. Behind him, someone whispered urgently. Morrison turned his head just enough to see Private Eddie Kowalski crawling forward with something that looked utterly wrong, a Thompson, but with a massive tube jutting from underneath the barrel. The thing looked like someone had welded a piece of drain pipe to a submachine gun. Kowalski grinned through the mud on his face. "Watch this." By November 1943, American forces had been island hopping across the Pacific for 18 months, and a consistent tactical problem had emerged that was killing Marines and soldiers at an alarming rate. The problem existed in the gap between 150 and 400 yards, too far for submachine guns and rifles to suppress effectively, too close to justify calling in artillery or air support, and often in terrain too dense for mortars to arc properly. Japanese defensive doctrine exploited this gap ruthlessly. After the devastating American victories at Guadalcanal and Tarawa, Japanese commanders had refined their defensive tactics. They positioned machine gun nests and rifle pits at precisely calculated distances, far enough that American infantry weapons lost effectiveness, close enough that by the time heavier support arrived, the defenders had already inflicted casualties and often withdrawn to secondary positions. The statistics were grim. In the Solomon Islands campaign from August 1942 to November 1943, American forces suffered 23,800 casualties, with 7,100 killed in action. Combat after-action reports from Guadalcanal, New Georgia, and Rendova revealed a consistent pattern. Platoons and squads found themselves pinned down in the 150-400 yard range, unable to effectively return fire, waiting for support that might take 15 minutes or 2 hours to arrive, depending on terrain and tactical situation. Standard infantry weapons of 1943 simply weren't designed for this specific range problem. The M1 Garand rifle was accurate to 500 yards, but required aimed fire, difficult when you're pinned down and can't expose yourself long enough to aim. The M1 Thompson could put out 600 to 700 rounds per minute, but was only truly effective to about 100 yards. The Browning automatic rifle had range, but only 20-round magazines and significant recoil. The 60mm mortar was perfect for the range, but required a 3-man crew, and set-up time squads under fire didn't have. What infantry squads needed was immediate, portable firepower that could reach out to 200, 250 yards with enough explosive power to suppress or destroy fortified positions. They needed something one man could carry and fire without setup time. They needed area effect weapons that didn't require precision aim when you're being shot at. The Army Ordnance Department had been wrestling with this problem since 1942. Engineers at Springfield Armory and Aberdeen Proving Ground had tested dozens of concepts. Rifle grenades that proved inaccurate and dangerous, under-barrel launchers that added too much weight, and various grenade dischargers copied from Japanese designs that American soldiers found awkward and unreliable. Meanwhile, Marines and soldiers in the Pacific were improvising their own solutions. Some units acquired Japanese Type 89 grenade dischargers dubbed knee mortars based on an erroneous belief about their use, and found them effective but ammunition-dependent. Others rigged up hand-thrown grenade tactics, but the maximum range of a hand-thrown grenade was maybe 40 yards, and that required exposing yourself in ways that often proved fatal. By mid-1943, the casualty reports and after-action analyses had made the requirement crystal clear to ordnance planners in Neal, Washington. American infantry needed a way to throw high-explosive grenades 150-250 yards with reasonable accuracy, using a system integrated with weapons they already carried and trusted. The weapon needed to weigh less than 5 pounds, require no specialized training beyond basic familiarization, and use standard ammunition already in the supply chain. What emerged from this requirement would change close-quarters jungle combat forever. If you want to see how American engineers solved this deadly tactical gap with a weapon so effective, the Japanese called it Kaminari no Bo, the Thunderstick. Hit that like button and subscribe. Because what happened next in that Bougainville drainage ditch would prove the concept in the most dramatic way possible. Back to Jack Morrison. The M1 grenade projection adapter, officially designated as such in October 1943, though Marines in the field would never call it that, represented a brilliantly simple solution to the range gap problem. Engineers at Springfield Armory had essentially created a launcher tube that attached to the Thompson submachine gun, converting it into a grenade launcher while maintaining its function as a submachine gun. The device consisted of 4 main components: a steel launching tube 12 inches long and 2.5 inches in diameter, a clamping bracket system that attached to the Thompson's barrel jacket, a trigger linkage that connected to the Thompson's existing trigger mechanism, and a specialized blank cartridge adapter. The entire assembly weighed 4.2 pounds and could be attached or removed in approximately 45 seconds by a trained operator. Here's how it worked. The launcher used a specially designed .45 caliber blank cartridge, essentially a standard .45 ACP round with no bullet, just powder, and a heavy crimp. When fired, the expanding gases were channeled through a precisely calibrated port into the launching tube. A standard Mark II fragmentation grenade, the pineapple grenade, familiar to every American soldier, was loaded into the tube with its safety pin still in place. The grenade sat on a special adapter cup that transferred the gas pressure evenly around the grenade's base. When the operator pulled the trigger, the blank round fired. The gases expanded into the tube, building pressure behind the grenade. The pressure pushed the grenade up and out of the tube, pulling the safety pin as it left. A spring-loaded mechanism built into the launcher's mouth automatically extracted the pin. The grenade arced through the air, armed and ready to detonate on impact, or after its 4 to 5 second fuse burned down. Effective range was 175 to 200 yards with reasonable accuracy. Maximum range was approximately 280 yards, though accuracy degraded significantly beyond 225 yards. The trajectory was high arcing, similar to a mortar, which meant the grenade could drop behind cover or into trenches. Rate of fire was limited by how fast an operator could load grenades and blank cartridges, about 6 to 8 rounds per minute for a trained user. The brilliance of the design lay in its simplicity. Unlike rifle grenades that required removing the standard magazine and loading a special grenade round, the Thompson adapter allowed the operator to fire grenades while keeping a full magazine of .45 ammunition loaded. If an enemy suddenly appeared at close range, the operator could simply detach the grenade launcher. A quick release lever allowed removal in 5 seconds, and engage with the Thompson standard 30-round stick magazine or 50-round drum. Initial production began in September 1943 at Springfield Armory with an order for 15,000 units. By October, the first Wound 200 launchers had been manufactured and were being rushed to the Pacific Theater. Priority distribution went to Marine Raider battalions and Army infantry regiments currently engaged in the Solomon Islands campaign. When the first crates arrived at Guadalcanal's Henderson Field on October 28, 1943, they came with minimal documentation, a 2-page instruction sheet with diagrams, and a warning that the devices were experimental and should be tested thoroughly before combat use. Most units received between 6 and 12 launchers per company, along with 200 blank cartridges and authorization to use standard Mark II grenades from their existing supplies. The reaction from soldiers and Marines who first saw the device was mixed. Some thought it looked crude and jury-rigged, like something a garage mechanic had cobbled together. Others immediately recognized the tactical potential. Gunnery Sergeant William Bull Hayes of the 3rd Marine Raider Battalion later recalled, "I looked at that thing and thought, Christ, that's either going to blow up in someone's face or change everything." Turned out to be the latter. Private Kowalski had received exactly 90 minutes of training on the M1 grenade projection adapter 2 days earlier. Now, at 5:49 hours on November 14th, with Japanese machine, gunfire tearing through the foliage above their heads, he would become the first Marine in his battalion to use it in actual combat. Morrison watched as Kowalski pulled a Mark II grenade from his ammunition pouch and carefully loaded it into the launcher tube. The grenade slid in smoothly, settling into the adapter cup with a soft metallic click. Kowalski's hands moved with deliberate precision as he extracted a blank cartridge from a special bandolier marked with red tape. The bright red warning meant blanks, grenade launcher only, in letters large enough to read in the dark. "You sure about this?" Morrison whispered. Kowalski chambered the blank round, his face set in concentration. Training sergeant said 175 to 200 yards. "I'm guessing they're at about 160. Should clear those palm logs by 10 feet, drop right behind them." The mathematics of trajectory and range were suddenly the difference between suppressing that machine gun nest and advertising their position with a dud round. Kowalski braced the Thompson against a fallen log, angled the barrel up at approximately 35 degrees, what the instruction sheet called optimal firing angle for medium-range engagement, and aimed slightly left of where they'd seen muzzle flashes. At 5:50 hours, Kowalski pulled the trigger. The blank round fired with a sharp, distinctive crack different from a standard .45 round, higher pitched with a whooshing sound as gases channeled through the launcher port. The grenade shot from the tube, arcing upward into the gray morning sky. Morrison tracked it visually for a fraction of a second before losing it against the cloud cover. The safety pin remained hanging from the launcher's extraction mechanism, proof the system had worked. 4 seconds. They counted silently, pressed into the mud. The explosion erupted exactly where Kowalski had aimed, behind the palm log fortification, with the distinctive crump of a Mark II grenade detonating against soft earth and wood. The Japanese machine gun went silent. Not suppressed, silent. Through the smoke, Morrison could see 2 bodies blown clear of the position, another moving weakly. "Load another one," someone said. Morrison realized it was his own voice. Kowalski already had the second grenade, halfway into the tube. He'd discarded the spent blank casing, chambered a fresh one. This time, he adjusted his aim slightly right, compensating for what he'd learned from the first shot. The second grenade launched at 5:51 hours, arcing toward a rifle pit they'd identified by muzzle flashes. Another 4-second delay, another explosion, this one sending up a geyser of dirt and palm fronds. The Japanese position erupted in confusion. Morrison could hear shouting in Japanese, the sound of men scrambling. They hadn't expected this. Their intelligence on American infantry weapons didn't include anything that could accurately deliver high explosive rounds at this range from a man-portable system. As far as Japanese tactical doctrine was concerned, pinned down American infantry should stay pinned down until mortars or artillery arrived, usually 15 to 20 minutes, in jungle terrain. Kowalski fired 4 more grenades in the next 3 minutes. The 5th round overshot by 20 yards, detonating in the jungle behind the Japanese position, a miss that nonetheless sent 2 enemy soldiers running directly into sight, where Morrison cut them down with a burst from his Thompson. The 6th round landed short, exploding 15 yards in front of the palm log bunker, but still creating enough concussion and shrapnel to wound at least 1 defender. At 5:54 hours, the Japanese position began a fighting withdrawal. Morrison could see them moving back through the jungle, carrying wounded, dragging equipment. Kowalski put 2 more grenades into their retreat path, not trying for direct hits, but creating a wall of explosions that forced the Japanese to abandon their wounded and most of their heavy weapons. Bacard, 5:58 hours, 11 minutes after Morrison had thought he was going to die in that drainage ditch. The immediate area was secured. The squad moved forward cautiously, clearing the abandoned position. They found 3 Japanese dead from grenade wounds, another 2 wounded so severely they died within minutes. The position's Type 92 heavy machine gun lay half buried in dirt from a near-direct hit, its ammunition box shredded by shrapnel. Sergeant Chen, who turned out to have only a shoulder wound and had been playing dead to avoid drawing fire, sat up slowly and stared at the carnage. "What the hell did you hit them with?" Kowalski held up the Thompson with its attached launcher, the tube still warm from firing. "Thunderstick, Sarge. That's what I'm calling it." The name would stick, though not in English. Within 2 weeks, Japanese intelligence reports from Bougainville would reference American infantry using Kaminari no Bo thundersticks. The name reflected both the distinctive sound of the blank cartridge firing and the thunderous impact of grenades landing in positions the Japanese had considered safe from American small arms. Morrison's squad had fired 8 grenades total, expending 8 blank cartridges and eliminating or suppressing an enemy position that would have otherwise required calling in mortar support, assuming mortar support could even reach their position through the jungle canopy. Total engagement time, 11 minutes. Friendly casualties, 1 wounded, returning to duty within 48 hours. Enemy casualties, 3 confirmed killed, 2 died of wounds, estimated 4 to 6 wounded in the withdrawal. The after-action report filed by Lieutenant James Horton, Morrison's platoon commander, noted, M1 grenade projection adapter proved highly effective in suppressing fortified position at ranges previously requiring heavier support weapons. Recommend immediate distribution to all rifle squads. By December 1943, production of the M1 grenade projection adapter had accelerated to 3,500 units per month at Springfield Armory, with an additional 2,000 units per month being manufactured at Rock Island Arsenal. The total order had been increased to 45,000 units, with priority distribution to Pacific Theater units engaged in offensive operations. The 1st Marine Division received 240 launchers in early December, just as they prepared for the Cape Gloucester operation in New Britain. The 37th Infantry Division got 180 units before their deployment to New Georgia. The 25th Infantry Division received 156 launchers for their operations in the northern Solomon Islands. Each battalion typically fielded 18 to 24 launchers, distributed at the rate of 2 per rifle platoon, with additional units held in battalion reserve. Training protocols evolved rapidly based on combat feedback. Initial training requirements specified 4 hours of classroom instruction and range time. By January 1944, this had been streamlined to 90 minutes of hands-on training focused on 4 essential skills: loading procedure, range estimation, trajectory compensation, and emergency detachment for close-quarters combat. The blank cartridge supply presented the primary logistical challenge. Each launcher required dedicated blank ammunition that couldn't be used for any other purpose. The .45 caliber blanks were manufactured at Frankfurt Arsenal in Philadelphia, with initial production of 500,000 rounds per month. By February 1944, production had increased to 1.2 million rounds monthly, but demand consistently exceeded supply. Combat units developed strict ammunition discipline. Standard loadout for a designated grenade launcher operator was 24 blank cartridges and 12 grenades, enough for sustained engagement, but not wasteful. Company commanders instituted controlled distribution policies where blank cartridges were issued immediately before operations and collected afterward, with each round accounted for. The weapon's tactical impact became evident in casualty statistics from December 1943 through March 1944. Units equipped with grenade launchers reported 23% fewer casualties when engaging fortified positions compared to units without them. Time required to suppress enemy positions at 150, 200-yard range dropped from an average of 18 minutes, waiting for mortar or artillery support, to under 5 minutes with grenade launchers. Japanese forces adapted their tactics in response. Intelligence reports captured in early 1944 referenced the American Thunder weapons and recommended increasing dispersion of defensive positions to minimize the effect of grenade bombardment. Japanese soldiers began targeting Thompson-equipped Marines specifically, recognizing that the distinctive launcher tube identified high-value targets. Staff Sergeant Michael Romano of the 3rd Marine Division described a firefight on Bougainville in January 1944. They started concentrating fire on our grenade guys the moment they saw those tubes. Lost 2 launcher operators in one engagement. had to start camouflaging the launchers with canvas wraps and foliage to make them less obvious. Despite Japanese countermeasures, the launcher's effectiveness remained high. At Cape Gloucester, in December 1943 and January 1944, Marine units equipped with grenade launchers successfully suppressed 73 documented Japanese defensive positions, with an average expenditure of 6.4 grenades per position. The 1st Marine Division alone fired approximately 4,200 grenades through the launchers during the Cape Gloucester campaign. The weapon proved particularly effective in specific tactical situations, suppressing bunkers and fighting positions at medium range, providing covering fire during river crossings, clearing jungle trail ambush positions, and supporting combat patrols operating beyond mortar range. It was less effective in open terrain, where the high trajectory made the grenades visible to enemy observers, and in extremely dense jungle, where overhead canopy could prematurely detonate grenades. Maintenance issues emerged as launchers saw extended combat use. The clamping bracket system required frequent adjustment and sometimes cracked under repeated firing stress. The trigger linkage mechanism proved vulnerable to mud and moisture, a significant problem in tropical environments. By February 1944, revised maintenance procedures included daily cleaning protocols and monthly replacement of worn components. The adapter's weight remained a persistent complaint. At 4.2 pounds plus the weight of grenades and blank cartridges, a fully equipped launcher operator carried significantly more weight than standard riflemen. Some units experimented with two-man teams, where one Marine carried the launcher and another carried the ammunition, allowing faster sustained fire. Production continued through mid-1944, eventually reaching 52,000 total units manufactured. However, distribution never achieved the originally planned levels. Many units that requisitioned launchers received only partial allotments due to competing priorities and limited manufacturing capacity. The 6th Marine Division, for example, requested 300 launchers in April 1944, but received only 114. The physics behind the M1 grenade projection adapter was straightforward, but required precise engineering tolerances to work safely. The .45 caliber blank cartridge generated approximately 15,000 pounds per square inch of pressure when fired. This pressure, channeled through the gas port into the launching tube, created sufficient force to accelerate a 21-ounce Mark II grenade to approximately 135 feet per second, the velocity needed to achieve 175 200-yard range. The challenge was controlling that pressure. Too much pressure, and the grenade would tumble in flight, or the launcher tube could rupture. Too little pressure, and the grenade wouldn't achieve effective range. Springfield Armory engineers solved this through a carefully calibrated gas port, essentially a hole drilled at a precise angle and diameter that allowed exactly the right amount of gas to enter the launching tube. The launcher tube itself was manufactured from seamless drawn steel tubing, heat-treated to withstand repeated pressure cycling. The interior was machined to extremely tight tolerances. Variations of more than 0.003 inches could cause grenades to jam or fire erratically. Each tube underwent proof testing with overpressure loads, 50% greater than standard firing pressure, before being approved for field use. The safety pin extraction mechanism represented perhaps the most ingenious aspect of the design. As the grenade left the tube, a spring-loaded arm engaged the pin's ring and pulled it free, arming the grenade in flight. This eliminated the need for soldiers to pull pins before loading, a procedure that would have been both dangerous and impractical under fire. The extracted pins remained caught in the mechanism, allowing operators to verify that grenades had armed properly. Accuracy depended primarily on range estimation and proper trajectory angle. The instruction manual provided a simple formula. For targets at 150 yards, hold the weapon at 30 degrees elevation. For 200 yards, 40 degrees. For maximum range, 45 degrees. In practice, experienced operators learned to compensate for wind, temperature, and terrain through trial and error. The high arcing trajectory meant grenades approached targets from above, making them effective against trenches and defilade positions. However, this same trajectory made hitting moving targets nearly impossible. The grenade's 4 to 5 second flight time meant fast-moving enemy soldiers could easily evade if they spotted the launch. Limitations became apparent through combat use. The weapon was ineffective beyond 225 yards due to accuracy degradation. It couldn't engage targets in thick jungle canopy. Grenades would detonate in the trees. Strong crosswinds could blow grenades off, course by 20 yards or more. And the distinctive sound of the blank cartridge firing advertised the shooter's position to enemy observers. The Thompson submachine gun itself suffered increased wear when used with the launcher. The added weight and stress of launching grenades caused accelerated wear on the bolt mechanism and receiver. Armorer reports from February 1944 noted that Thompsons regularly used with launchers required parts replacement 40%, more frequently than standard Thompsons. Blank cartridge malfunctions presented the most dangerous operational problem. If a blank failed to generate sufficient pressure, the grenade would remain in the tube with its pin pulled and fuse burning. Training emphasized immediate action drills. Tilt the weapon skyward, allow the grenade to slide out, throw it as far as possible. In combat conditions, with adrenaline pumping and hands shaking, this procedure didn't always work smoothly. Private First Class Anthony Rizzo of the 25th Infantry Division experienced this exact malfunction during a patrol on New Georgia in January 1944. His blank cartridge fired, but generated only partial pressure. The grenade moved 6 inches up the tube and stopped, pin pulled, fuse burning. Rizzo inverted the weapon, shook it, and the grenade fell out at his feet. He kicked it away instinctively. It detonated 3 seconds later, 15 feet from his position. Rizzo survived with shrapnel wounds to his legs, but never used the launcher again. Despite such incidents, the weapon's overall safety record proved acceptable. Out of approximately 180,000 grenades fired through the launchers in combat from November 1943 through August 1945, documented accidents caused an estimated 12 friendly casualties, a rate of 0.07%. Standard hand-thrown grenades, by comparison, caused friendly casualties at roughly 10 times that rate due to fumbled throws and premature detonations. The Japanese never developed a comparable weapon system. Their Type 89 grenade discharger served a similar tactical role, but required 3-man crews and separate ammunition. Captured Japanese intelligence reports from mid-1944 expressed frustration that American infantry squads possessed organic firepower capabilities previously requiring specialized support weapons. Production of the M1 grenade projection adapter ceased in August 1945 following Japan's surrender. The final manufacturing total reached 53,147 units, with approximately 48,000 actually distributed to combat units in the Pacific Theater. The remaining inventory, roughly 5,800 launchers, went into storage at ordnance depots in the United States. The weapon's operational lifespan proved remarkably short. By late 1944, the M7 grenade launcher for the M1 Garand rifle had entered production, offering similar capabilities with better accuracy and lighter weight. The M7 could be fitted to any Garand rifle, whereas the Thompson adapter worked only with Thompsons. And by 1944, the Thompson itself was being phased out in favor of the more economical M3 grease gun submachine gun. Most units turned in their Thompson launchers during the spring and summer of 1945 as M7 launchers became available. The weapons were collected, cataloged, and shipped to ordnance depots where they languished in storage for decades. Some remained in Marine Corps armories until the 1960s, kept as historical artifacts rather than serviceable equipment. The technology itself evolved into the M203 grenade launcher, which entered service in 1969 mounted under M16 rifles in Vietnam. The M203 used a different propulsion system, a high-low pressure chamber rather than blank cartridges, but the tactical concept remained identical. Give infantry squads organic firepower to engage targets at 150, 350 meters without waiting for heavy support. Modern successors include the M320 grenade launcher module, which can be mounted on various rifle platforms or used as a standalone weapon. These current systems fire 40 mmol grenades with effective range to 350 meters and can engage targets the M1 grenade projection adapter could only dream of reaching. The original launchers themselves became collector's items. Surviving examples are rare. Most were either scrapped in the 1950s or lost to neglect and rust. Museums hold perhaps 24 verified, authentic M1 grenade projection adapters. In 2019, a complete launcher with original documentation sold at auction for $8,400 to a private military history collector. Declassification of related documents occurred gradually. The basic technical manuals were declassified in 1958, but after-action reports and tactical analyses remained classified until 1973 under broader Pacific Theater combat documentation review. Some specific reports detailing Japanese countermeasures weren't fully declassified until 1991. The weapon never achieved the fame of iconic World War II weapons, like the M1 Garand or the Browning automatic rifle. It appeared in few photographs. Combat photographers rarely captured the brief, chaotic engagements where launcher operators worked. Veterans who used it remembered it fondly, but understood its limitations. It was a weapon born of specific circumstances, effective for a specific problem, and rendered obsolete by better solutions. Yet its legacy persists in modern infantry doctrine. The principle it validated, that rifle squads need organic capability to deliver high explosive firepower at medium range without waiting for support, remains fundamental to infantry organization worldwide. Every modern infantry squad includes grenade launchers precisely because weapons like the M1 grenade projection adapter prove the concept in combat. Jack Morrison returned home to Scranton in December 1945, carrying shrapnel scars from a different engagement and memories he rarely discussed. He worked 32 years for the Pennsylvania Railroad and died in 1989, never having spoken publicly about that November morning in the Bougainville drainage ditch. His grandson found his service records and after-action reports while researching the family's military history in 2003. Private Eddie Kowalski, the Marine who fired those first combat rounds from the M1 grenade projection adapter, received a Bronze Star for his actions at Bougainville. He survived the war, returned to Chicago, and ran a successful plumbing business. When interviewed by a local newspaper for a Veterans Day feature in 1983, he mentioned the thunder stick briefly, describing it as a strange contraption that saved our bacon more than once. He died in 1997. Sergeant Frank Chen, wounded in that same engagement, recovered and continued serving through the Okinawa campaign. He retired from the Marine Corps as a Master Sergeant in 1962 and spent his retirement teaching history at a community college in San Diego. In his courses on the Pacific War, he sometimes mentioned the grenade launcher as an example of American industrial ingenuity responding to battlefield needs. "We had a problem," he told students, "and some engineer somewhere figured out an answer. That happened 1,000 times in that war. The Thompson launcher was just one of them." The weapons documentation remained largely classified for decades after the war, not because of any particular secrecy, but because it was bundled with thousands of other tactical reports from the Pacific Theater. When these documents were declassified in the 1970s and 1980s, military historians began recognizing the M1 grenade projection adapter's significance as an early solution to the infantry support weapons gap. Veterans who used the launchers in combat remember them with the practical appreciation soldiers reserve for weapons that worked when needed. Not the love lavished on M1 Garands or the mystique surrounding sniper rifles, but the simple acknowledgement that when you were pinned down at 175 yards with no support available, having 8 grenades you could throw that far made the difference between surviving and not surviving. The Japanese nickname, Kaminari no Bo, the thunderstick, persisted in Japanese military histories written after the war. Former Japanese soldiers interviewed in the 1970s and 1980s recalled the distinctive sound and the psychological impact of American infantry suddenly possessing firepower previously requiring mortar support. "We adjusted our tactics," one former Japanese sergeant noted in a 1979 interview, "but the adjustment meant spreading out more, which made us easier targets for their rifles. It was a problem without a good solution." Thousands of Marines and soldiers carried those thundersticks through Pacific jungles, facing an enemy who had refined defensive tactics to deadly perfection. They turned a submachine gun into a grenade launcher with 4.2 pounds of steel and some brilliant engineering, bridging a tactical gap that was costing American lives every single day. Most of them never knew the weapon's official designation, never read the technical specifications, never understood the engineering behind that gas port and pressure chamber. They just knew it worked when they needed it. If this story of American innovation under fire moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss stories of the weapons and the warriors who wielded them. Drop a comment and let me know. Where are you watching from? Did your grandfather or great-grandfather serve in the Pacific? What weapons or battles should we cover next? These weren't just weapons. They were tools that brought men home alive. And the engineers who designed them, the workers who built them, and the soldiers who fired them deserve to be remembered. Until next time, honor their memory by learning their story.